Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Real Madrid take advantage of Barcelona being unable to start the match with Lionel Messi as they earned a 1-1 draw at Camp Nou. How did they do it? Where did Barcelona go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how Real Madrid drew Barcelona. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer. Both sides look to approach the game and how Real Madrid were able to go into halftime up 1-0, then move to the second half, see if anything changed, and see how Barcelona were able to equalize. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Barcelona 4-3-3, no Lionel Messi, Coutinho, Luis Suarez, and Malcolm up front. In midfield, and with Busquets, Rakitic, and Artur. Then we move to Real Madrid, also 4-3-3, Benzema, Vinicius, and they went with Lucas Vazquez up front. And then in midfield, no Casemiro, so they went with Llorente just behind Luka Modric and Toni Kroos. So now let's get to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game and how Real Madrid were able to go into halftime up 1-0. So when we look at Real Madrid against Barcelona, we have to look at the shapes, 4-3-3 against 4-3-3. That should lead to tactical issues based off the fact that both sides could stifle each other out. When we look at Barcelona, they did look to press from the front with their 4-5-1 when they didn't have the ball. They would have Suarez somewhat push out to Ramos, and that would see Artur push out from the left-sided position and as a shuttler, two-step to Varane. The wider players would push out to the fullbacks, and that would eventually see Busquets step into Modric, whereas you already had Rakitic sticking towards Kroos, and that's how they would press from the front to ensure that you wouldn't have Real Madrid playing out of the back so easily. The thing with Barcelona though was their shape in general. They still had some issues there. Suarez was up front trying to bother the center backs, trying to pressure them, trying to pull them in. Coutinho, on the other hand, you knew what he was about. He was dropping off deeper to check in, whereas Malcolm held his shape in the wider position, holding the touchline, looking to get the balls to go 1v1 with Marcelo. That would allow Alba to push forward, and they would want Alba to push forward and drag back Carvajal, and then or drag back Lucas Vazquez. And from the right-hand side, they wanted combinations with Semedo and Malcolm. That was how they wanted to operate, but they struggled to create chances. Why did they struggle to create chances? Well, then we have to look to Real Madrid. What did Real Madrid do here to combat that? Well, when you had Jordi Alba pushing forward, you had Carvajal stepping out and Carvajal stuck to Coutinho. When Coutinho tried to drop off a bit deeper, Carvajal was stuck with him, and Lucas Vazquez was dropping in to ensure that Alba didn't have any space to break forward or make runs in behind. And with that being said, that had Real Madrid looking like more of a back five because Carvajal was narrow and Vazquez was pushed so deep with Alba trying to push forward. On the other side, they had their best chances down the right-hand side based off the fact that they were able to switch balls out to Malcolm. We had Rakitic switch the ball out to him, and he was able to run at Marcelo, and we had Semedo make a narrow run in between Marcelo and Ramos to get the ball back, but his pullback ended up leading to a corner. We had Semedo end up being booked, forcing Ramos to get booked by pushing forward. We had a free kick from the right-hand side from Malcolm that led to a Rakitic header off the crossbar. And then we had a long glade diagonal to Malcolm where he was able to run at Marcelo, cut in on him, cut past Ramos and Kroos before laying it off to Suarez, who was able to curl his effort on goal that Keylor Navas was able to push away. But that was how Barcelona were able to get their chances. They struggled to get anything through midfield. The midfield in the first half was very sloppy, and Suarez was kind of isolated up front based off the fact that they had Llorente dropping off a bit deeper because Barcelona doesn't have a natural number 10 that was floating between the lines. So what happened here was that you had the shuttlers able to push onto Artur, and they were able to push onto Rakitic. And if there was any case where they did see Modric in the earlier stages buzz around and try to press Busquets, they could push Llorente into that space to step to Artur if need be. But what happened here for the most part was that they had the shuttlers with the shuttlers, and they had Llorente kind of stepping in. And what happened here was that it was more of a triangle ahead of Suarez with Llorente at the tip, and then they had the two center backs within close proximity to ensure he couldn't get on the ball. So Barcelona struggled to create chances. Apart from anything going down the right-hand side with Malcolm and Semedo, they didn't really create much because Coutinho was poor, often always dropping off deeper. Carvajal stepped to him. At times you had Varane stepping to him, and he wasn't really impacting the game in the final third. And that was a big problem for Barcelona because, like I said, Real Madrid kind of did the same thing when they were pressing. They had the shuttlers pushing out. If they had Modric step, like I said, Llorente would step to Artur, but for the most part, that's how they were really dropping off. And the only time that they really did look susceptible was when Vinicius kind of did track off a bit, and they were able to get Semedo forward. But for the most part, everything was going down the right-hand side for Barcelona, but Malcolm was unable to really convert. He did have that one opportunity where you did see the ball played into Luis Suarez, and although the referee did call it offside, if they went back to VAR, it would be ruled onside, and the goal probably would have stemmed from a long glay pass that eventually wasn't really cleared, and the ball ended up falling to Suarez, who was able to wrap it in between the center backs for Malcolm, making the run across Marcelo, but he was only able to fire a shot at Keylor Navas, another quality save from the goalkeeper. But when we think about how Real Madrid were able to get their chances, a lot of it stemmed down that same side, and they were looking to funnel the ball right back to Vinicius to break forward. We saw in the opening stages where Modric was able to flick the ball out to Vinicius, and he was able to run 1v1 against Semedo. You had Rakitic coming over to support. He's able to cut in on him and lay the ball off to Toni Kroos, who forced the keeper Ter Stegen into a save, and that was one of their first opportunities that really saw Real Madrid break forward. The build-up to the goal kind of summed up what they were trying to do and what they were doing from an offensive standpoint, because Karim Benzema was exceptional, dropping off deeper, linking play, often moving out to the left-hand side to create space and pick up the ball in that space to try and create overloads. When we look at the build-up to the goals, Ramos switching the ball out to Marcelo. When he switches out to Marcelo, you have Malcolm stepping to him. So with Malcolm stepping to him, you have Benzema drifting off into that space down the left-hand side. And he's able to flick the ball out to Benzema so Malcolm can't get onto it. And what happens is that it forces Semedo out. So when it forces Semedo out, now Benzema is able to make that run, and Vinicius is able to tuck into that space. So Benzema is able to make that run, drag out Semedo and Rakitic, and then flick the ball into the space to split them for Vinicius. PK now steps out, and now Vinicius is able to hold it up, and this is just not really a good play from Barcelona because Benzema takes a lot of time before he makes the run into the space behind Jordi Alba. The cross wasn't necessarily meant for Benzema, but he read it well, and Alba was unable to deal with it. And when he's unable to deal with it, what happens there is that he's able to pull it back for Vasquez, making the run across long glay, and he was able to poke his effort into the net. And that was how they were able to go ahead. But a lot of what Barcelona also did struggle with is poor passing in midfield. Artur was misplacing passes, everyone was misplacing passes, and they were being dispossessed. Because when you think about it, Rakitic was dispossessed, you had Modric, and you had Vinicius step to him. And that ended up leading into a break where it was a 3v2 with Kroos stepping into the play and Benzema stepping into the play. And what happens is that Vinicius opted to shoot rather than played into a free Kroos, and his shot was blocked by Piqué. That was one opportunity. We saw Coutinho from a more advanced position misplacing a pass, and that pass ended up sliding out to Benzema, and Benzema was able to run at goal and slide the ball to Vinicius, who thought there was someone making an overlapping run, and then his reverse pass was often looked like a tame effort on goal, and that was pushed aside. Besides that, they were still breaking down the left-hand side. We again had Varane winning a header, and that header saw Modric flick the ball over Busquets for Vasquez running down that line, running into the central area, and he was able to slide the ball out to Vinicius, who was running at Semedo, and Alba was trying to track back. And what we had there was that Benzema was making the run across into the box, but Vinicius's cross was just a bit overhit, and that was why Benzema was unable to get to it, which eventually led to a goal kick. And what happened there was that now we had Busquets, who was dispossessed, and he was dispossessed by Vinicius, and Lucas Vasquez broke forward, and what was a a two-man break, and he slid it to Vinicius, but his shot was blocked by Artur. But when you break things down as a whole, you saw both sides operating and getting their best chances down the same side. Barcelona were able to get it through Malcolm, but he was unable to really make the difference in the final third, despite getting into good opportunities, and the same could be said for Vinicius. Often getting into 1v1 with Semedo, they were able to break on the counterattack due to poor Barcelona mistakes in possession. And what happened was that when Vinicius did often get into these good areas, like Malcolm, these young players just lacked that final touch, that final incisive pass in the final third, and that was the big issue as to why neither side were able to increase their goal tally. But Barcelona went down in the first half 1-0. So now let's get to the second half, see how they were able to get back into the game and what changed in the second half. In terms of the shape and the overall approach, nothing really changed in the second half. What we did see from Barcelona, though, was that their midfield was able to retain possession well. They weren't giving up the ball in their area, and they were able to really push Real Madrid back. But as we saw, Coutinho was still dropping off and being held back by Carvajal, who stuck a bit narrow. They still had somewhat of a back five when Alba was stepping forward to drop Lucas Vazquez into that space, and they still had the issue where Suarez wasn't getting quality service because Llorente was sitting there and there wasn't anyone really carrying the ball or making incisive passes in the final third. We did see Coutinho within the opening 15 minutes or so get the ball in positions in the narrow pockets where he was able to fire low shots on goal, but they never really tested Keylor Navas. So when you think about that, you question how Barcelona is really going to find an advantage based off the fact that they weren't really being troubled by Vinicius on the counter attack anymore, and Real Madrid were retreating and dropping off a bit deeper. The way that they did score the goal did make sense, and it eventually led to a defensive mistake from Real Madrid. But what we saw was, as we expected, Luka Modric trying to step to Lenglet to offer a press. Now what happened there was that he was able to clip the ball over Lucas Vazquez, and Alba was able to break in free, but we had Keylor Navas off his line quickly to ensure that you couldn't get Alba to get a shot on goal. But Suarez reacted quickly and was able to curl his effort off the post, and it eventually fell to Malcolm in the box, where he was able to fire it off Carvajal. It took a slight deflection, and it was able to beat Ramos at the near post, and that was how Barcelona were able to get back into the game. What we eventually saw after that was we saw a bunch of changes. We saw Messi and Vidal come in for Rakitic and for Philippe Coutinho, and what we ended up seeing as well was the fact that Casemiro and we saw Gareth Bale come on. So with that being said, you expected a change from Real Madrid. Gareth Bale with a bit more pace, a bit more power to carry the ball forward, and Casemiro sitting into that deeper role. Barcelona ended up pushing out Messi into more of a central role, and we did see Suarez kind of float into that space as well, with Malcolm coming off the left, but we didn't really see an improvement from what we were seeing from Barcelona before, because they weren't really testing Keylor Navas. Yes, you had Messi, who was able to drop into that space in central midfield to ensure that there was more control for Barcelona and drifting out to the right when need be. But with that being said, whenever he did pick up the ball in these zones, he was often occupied based off the fact that Real Madrid had enough numbers in that zone that were able to really deal with the threat. And that was why, and when Messi picked up the ball in those zones, his final pass wasn't really connecting with teammates. It just seemed like he was off waves with them, and that wasn't really leading to many opportunities for Barcelona. They eventually brought in Aliana, and what happened there was that he ended up taking off Malcolm, and that didn't really change anything that they were trying to do, because now they became more narrow. They didn't really have a runner in behind that could really cause a threat for them. And again, this is where you could say that they do miss Dembele, because he does offer them something different. And if Coutinho's not making those forward runs for them, and they can't really get anything else from Malcolm, which is why Ayena came on, then that's where Barcelona were struggling. Suarez was a bit out of it. Messi did, like I said, pick up the game, and he was picking up the ball in dangerous positions, but just a bit off the pace, lacking the final ball, no real runners to connect with, and the game kind of fizzled out as it wore on. Real Madrid did bring on Asensio, but again, no goalkeepers really had to make any significant changes. So a lot of this game did take place in the first half, where more so the key moments. Vinicius down the left-hand side, Malcolm causing a threat down the right, Barcelona's sloppy play in midfield ensures that The second leg will be great as Real Madrid take an away goal to the Santiago Bernabeu. But let me know what you guys think. Will Barcelona have enough gas in the tank to rescue this tie? Will they need some Lionel Messi magic? And what about Real Madrid? Are they built to, one, go to the Bernabeu and protect this lead, or build on it? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.